Our podcast reviews well-known movies and contains spoilers. The podcast may contain mature subject matter and mature language. Listener discretion is advised. Enjoy the show.
Quiet on set. Places, everybody. And action.
Welcome, everyone, to the Hooked on Movies podcast. Today, we will be looking at the 1994 American sports drama Blue Chips. With me are Ken.
A foul is not a foul unless the referee blows his whistle.
And Ted.
Eric, you can get through college half-assed. Ken, you can get through life half-assed. But I'll guarantee you boys one thing, sure as hell, I'll guarantee you this, you can't win half-assed.
Good advice. And I'm Eric. You took the purest thing in your life and corrupted it. For what? For what, Ted?
Nothing.
That's right. All right, we're talking Blue Chips today. Ted, give us the details of this movie.
Okay, Blue Chips was directed by William Friedkin. It was a screenplay by Ron Shelton. It has a running time of 108 minutes. It had a release date of February 18th, 1994. It had a budget of $35 million, but a box office gross of $26 million. Blue Chips stars Nick Nolte as Coach Pete Bell, Mary McDonnell as Jenny Bell, J.T. Walsh as Happy Kuykendall, Ed O'Neill as Ed, Alfre Woodard as Levita McRae, Bob Cousy as Vic Roker, Larry Bird as himself, Matt Nover as Ricky Rowe, Shaquille O'Neal as Neon Bordeaux, Anthony Penny Hardaway as Butch McRae, Anthony C. Hall as Tony, Marquez Johnson as Mel, Robert Wool as Marty, and Silk Cozart as Slick, Jim Beaver as Ricky's dad, and uncredited Louis Gossett Jr. as Father Dawkins. Now, this movie has an amazing amount of other basketball talent as cameos where they play themselves. In those, we have Bobby Knight. He's also one of the people that the main character is based off of. And we have Jerry Tarkanian, Jim Boeheim, Kevin Garnett, Alan Houston, Dick Vitale, Todd Donahoe, Rick Pitino, George Lynch, Calbert Chaney, Bobby Hurley, Eric Anderson, Greg Graham, Joe Hillman, Jamal Meeks, Keith Smart, and the coach of Purdue basketball. I did this last time.
You did that last time. And the cast of the Hollywood Squares.
And Jerry Mathers as the Beaver.
And Matt Painter.
Now, I'm not a real basketball fan, but even I know that's a pretty impressive cast of players.
For the time, in 1994, there's a lot of names there that are going to be household names, as I guess would be considered a drawing card.
So the movie didn't make a lot of money, kind of a bust.
Yeah. So as far as the critics go, we have a Rotten Tomatoes score. The critic score is a 37% splat.
Ouch.
It has an audience score of 51%. This is going to be one of the lowest critic scores that we've ever got. But I was able to find some pretty heavy hitters on both sides, amazingly enough. On the negative side, we have Desson Thompson of the Washington Post. And he said, if it wasn't for some exciting round ball action, Shaquille O'Neal's hulking, dunking presence, and a wonderfully guttural performance from Coach Nick Nolte, you would slither off the bench asleep. Marjorie Baumgarten from the Austin Chronicle said, much of the movie's problem, I suspect, comes from the vast use of non-professionals in dramatic roles, whose charismatic abilities should be restricted to the basketball court and not to the dramatic arena. On the positive side, though, we have Janet Maslin from the New York Times, and she said if Mr. Friedkin didn't have to work so strenuously, framing two shots of Mr. Nolte with his 7-foot athlete, it might be hard to remember that Mr. O'Neill has a day job. And Roger Ebert from the Chicago Sun-Times said, what Friedkin brings to this story is a tone that feels completely accurate. The movie is a morality play told in the realistic, sometimes cynical terms of modern high-pressure college sports. The underlying theme, I think, is that since top-level intercollegiate athletic programs are profit centers for their universities and feeding programs for the pro leagues, maybe the players should be paid, and the pretense of amateurism dropped.
Just to let you know, Eric, I know what Siskel thought of this movie.
Do
I was
you?
watching Ebert and Siskel. Ebert was telling how much he liked it, and Siskel was saying how much he didn't. And they were comparing it to Hoop Dreams. Ebert was like, well, you're comparing apples to oranges. And he goes, you're right. I'm comparing it to a good movie to a really bad movie.
Well, I can see Roger's point there. Comparing Blue Chips to what is considered one of the best. That's considered one of the best documentaries ever made.
I thought it was funny that Siskel decided to go that route by just saying, yeah, what's good and what's bad.
The critics, even though are more to the negative side of on the 37%, you do have close to a 50-50 split, so it would make sense that Gene and Roger would be on opposite sides of this one. I think Roger had an affinity for William Friedkin, though, too. And you also have to remember that Roger went to school at the University of Illinois in Champaign, and his first job was in downstate Illinois covering high school basketball. So that might have clouded his perception of the movie.
Yeah, potentially. So, Ted, do you remember the first time you saw Blue Chips?
I know I didn't see it in the movie theater when it came out, but this would have been one that I would have waited for the opening weekend where it debuted on video, and I would have rented it from the local video store.
Yeah, for me, this is one of those movies that kind of is like a blur. I've seen it quite a few times, but I honestly don't remember the first time I saw it. It came out in 94, so probably saw it sometime in the mid to late 90s. Probably be my guess.
At this point in time, I mean, this is the height of the Bulls. So the interest in the NBA was at an all-time high, and I really liked Shaquille O'Neal when he was coming out of LSU. I thought he was amazing. Never seen anybody move like that. That was that big. And I mean, this is before the Chris Rock doing the Little Penny Sprite commercials with Penny Hardaway.
I love those.
Everybody knew about, or at least everybody in the circles that I traveled with in high school at the time. I mean, we knew about Middle Tennessee and Anthony Hardaway and those guys because we followed the tournament. So you knew about these guys coming through.
Ken, we're assuming you cable. Are you going to prove me wrong?
No, it should have been cable, probably 95, I would imagine. I agree with Ted. Same idea with the collegiate tournament. I think even Shaquille O'Neal's last game, ironically enough, in college was against Bob Knight's Indiana Hoosiers, and I think they spanked him.
All right, man. Well, tell us about the plot of this movie.
So Pete Bell is a college basketball coach who runs a clean program at Western University. They're called the Dolphins in Los Angeles. He's under a lot of pressure as his team is not winning as often as it once did. He needs to attract new star players, but the brightest stars of the future are secretly being paid by other schools, which is against the NCAA rules. Pete is desperate. After his first losing season, he seeks out a school booster named Happy. Happy will stop at nothing to land these high school players for Western's next season and gets the okay from the coach to do so. This includes offering a new car to a gigantic neon Bordeaux, a house and a job to the mother of Butch McRae, and a tractor to the father of Ricky Rowe, as well as $30,000 in a bag for Ricky. With sports writer ads suspecting a scandal, Pete continues to be contaminated by demands from the players and a dirty association with the booster. His estranged wife agrees to tutor Neon, who has below average grades, but she feels betrayed when Pete lies to her about the new athletes receiving illegal contributions to attend the school. Happy tells Pete he owns him as one of his senior players, Tony, personal favorite, had shaved points in a game his freshman season. Pete is disgusted at what he and his program have become. Western University has a big nationally televised game coming up versus the number one ranked Indiana Hoosiers, coached by Bobby Knight. After winning the game, Pete cannot bear the guilt of having cheated. At a press conference, he confesses to the entire scandal and resigns as head coach, leaving the press conference and the arena. An epilogue later reveals that the university would be suspended from tournament play for 3 years. Pete did continue to coach, but at a high school level. Tony graduated and played pro ball in Europe. Ricky Rowe got injured and returned home to run the family farm, and Neon and Butch dropped out of college, but both now play in the NBA. The end.
This movie's got a really interesting start to it. No surprise I'm a big Nick Nolte fan, and I just love how this movie just kicks off with him just going on a rant in his team in the locker room before the game. You know, it kicks off with a team that he's got a history of, you know, being a champion, you know, having winning records and going all the way, or at least going to the Final Four, I think. And he's got a team that, he's like right around the 500 mark?
Yes, yeah, he's like a game over 500 going
potentially on a losing record, and it is just setting him off. And I kind of love how he's just walking in and walking out and just losing his shit, going crazy. I love Nick Nolte.
I have a problem with this scene right off the bat.
Why? Why would you?
Because it's the start of the game.
Yeah.
He's telling them how horseshit they are at the start of the game. This is kind of a halftime rant.
True.
This is not the start of a game. This is not how you get somebody riled up for the beginning of the game. I'm thinking they're in the halftime of a game and he's upset because they're playing like crap. No, we get this at the beginning of the game. Again, like you said, he comes back. He leaves ripping on them a couple of times. He comes back twice. He takes a water cooler and he throws it across the room. The game hasn't even started yet, and he's calling them crap.
He's a little
Usually,
high-strung.
when your coach comes and talks to you, he's there to tell you how good you are and how much you guys worked on being good throughout the week and that you can do this. Not him. He basically tells them that he has no desire to watch them play anymore, that he's ready for the season to be done. This is not a motivational speech at the beginning of a game.
True, it's not motivational, but it is fun.
He's definitely chewing scenery here, but I mean,
Yeah.
it definitely grips you. Now, we do know that Nick Nolte spent about 6 months with Bobby Knight in preparation for this role. This wouldn't surprise me in the least. 1994 Bobby Knight, this would have been something that he would have done something similar. It wouldn't be that big of a stretch for my imagination. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind when he starts in on this is he's Bobby Knight. It's undeniable how close he tries to portray Bobby Knight here. I mean, you go from his craziness before the game, which I agree with Ken, it is a completely ridiculous way. And I've been around, it was just in high school, but I was around enough coaches, they would not have sat there and tore somebody down before. Now, at halftime, yeah, I watched a coach break a door because
Very cool.
they were so mad.
Nice.
Yeah, I did that to
So-
second graders in basketball. So,
Well, they deserved it.
yeah, second graders, yeah.
Little punks.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, and I agree also with Ken that this feels more like a halftime speech.
It is.
that-
It's definitely more halftime. Or,
But Nick Nolte does a great job here of grabbing your attention. You're under no pretense as to what kind of a coach he is and who he's trying to imitate. And then, of course, the craziness and the chicanery that goes on during the course of the game, where the basketball is actually fairly believable because they used real basketball players. The basketball's actually probably one of the best parts of the movie. And, of course, you have him kicking the ball up into the stands.
total Bobby Knight-ish.
Which is
instead of a chair. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
I think it's almost played a comic relief at the beginning because of the fact that he goes in, rips them, then tells his coaches, you deal with it. They come and
Right.
get ready to talk to the players, and then he comes back. Then he leaves again. They go get ready to talk to the players, and then he comes back. You almost can't take it seriously because it's played for a comic relief type of deal at the beginning of a movie. And I agree with you as far as the basketball action is great. The only thing that I have a problem that was pointed out to me was that every shot that goes in, even on layups, the net makes that swoosh sound. And no net was. The nets are not going to make that sound
Whoosh.
unless you're drilling a jumper that goes right through on a layup. It's played for effect.
Right, I mean-
when I watched that and saw that and somebody told that to me, I can't stop
Yeah.
seeing that and hearing that now.
I will watch the movie again at some point, and I will forget that you ever said that because
I'll remind you.
that's annoying. If we're gonna start talking about the Nick Nolte character, we're gonna get into what is one of my biggest complaints about this movie, and that's every character has to be a stereotype of some sort. There's not one single main character who is just a character. You have to have Tony, the player who is flunking TV, which whatever,
And screwing anything that moves.
right, and has
That's
a
a big
paternity
stereotype.
has a paternity problem.
Everybody loves him, though.
And then, of course, it's that player who shaves points. It's not the team, it's just the one player. Then you have Ricky Rowe, the recruit who is essentially the face, because he's the one that sits down with the coaches and utters the line, I'm a blue chip recruit. I believe I'm worth something more. Put $30,000 into a gym bag. So we have him, and of course he's the country bumpkin from Indiana who lived outside of French Lick, just like Larry Bird.
I like the subtleness of his father's racism.
yeah.
with the
yeah.
Baptists.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. I didn't catch that until like second time I watched it. I'm like,
Yeah, no, I caught that. I'm like,
Whoa.
oh, yeah. And I love how Nolte's changing his religion constantly.
Oh, yeah.
Playing, yes.
that's fun. That's fun. He works as a
Pentecostal.
Catholic.
Yeah,
I grew up
that's-
Pentecostal. Yes, and he
I'm-
just starts dancing down the aisle. We all know Southern Indiana is a very big white supremacist area, but I found it odd that his father's racism like that was kind of a little blatant when he's sending his kid off to playing college. I just thought, a little odd.
Oh, when it comes to money, then it doesn't matter. The problem is they're all one-dimensional.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
It's,
all
you know-
the players are one-dimensional. They don't have enough to them for me to care about them.
I guess there is some sort of, even though I don't like the character, I guess Nick Nolte's main character of Pete does have a background, even though I believe it's stereotypical. But the only character who has really like any sort of a character about him is Neon Bordeaux with Shaquille O'Neal. He's really the only person that has a personality. Everybody else's personality is based off of a one-dimensional stereotype. Actually, Neon Bordeaux is not a stereotype. He's just a big, athletic, awesome basketball player who has a sense of humor and is probably smart, even though he plays dumb.
And everything
does
is
that on
racially
purpose.
biased.
Right.
Yeah.
He does it on purpose just because it amuses him. There's an actual character there, and he's the only one that has a character.
To a certain extent, I agree with you on that. I think I could have got a little bit more humor out of him.
If it was the Shaq that's on the
Right.
TNT pregame, pre and post game show, yes, there would have been a lot more humor because
A lot
that
more
Shaq
humor
is
to him.
awesome.
But I think he has kind of a stereotype is the guy who's a really gifted athlete, but is smart as all get out. You know, he finishes, I think, on his SATs over 900.
Yeah, he didn't
But
even
Butch,
try.
But Butch is at 1,200. No, he tried.
Butch is supposed to be like a genius, but he's the guy. I don't want to be here. I need to leave. I
Miss my
can't
mom.
handle
Sick.
moving away from home. It's
You
just
gave my
name
mom a
name
new
company.
house and a job. Is she
Exactly.
going to keep it? Come on.
Right.
And the problem
He's
with that
very
is
whiny.
Hardaway is not very good.
Well, no, he's
Well-
not playing himself. I think Shaquille O'Neal's playing himself. Penny is not playing himself. If you remember, 1994, he was as confident of a player as there was. I mean, he was not super flashy. He was never like an Allen Iverson or anybody like that, but he was not buttoned up like Grant Hill. He came out and he knew that he was talented and he was willing to go out to the floor and show you. That's not how they took this character for him. And I think that he's playing against type. Instead of just letting him be an awesome basketball player that has this backstory where he's got a 1,200 on his SATs, they turned him into a whiny little
Mama boy.
Even to the point where he's being recruited, he starts off with the whining. And you already know the moment that Pete Bell walks into the room and is giving him the recruiting speech, you know that this is the character that he is. He's like, I don't know. It's so far away.
Mom's the one who wears the
it's-
balls in that family.
it's
She
the
knows what she
most-
wants.
It's just bad. It's a disservice to these people.
I love the mom's reaction when Nick Nolte tries to play a scrimmage in the living room and she's
Yeah.
just giving him this
I
dirty
hate
look.
that.
I don't understand what he was trying to prove
I don't.
there.
He's not doing the motion offense. It's just ridiculousness. He's being an idiot is what he's trying to be.
Did you guys catch the
There's so
subtle
many
line
problems.
from Louis Gossett Jr.'s character about the mom?
Hmm.
He goes, I can probably get her to waive her $1,000 fee to talk to you.
Right.
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, she is out for money, regardless
Damn
of
straight.
what.
She wants to get her kids out of. I mean, I'm assuming it's a similar situation to like what Cabrini Green was because
Yeah.
they are from Chicago.
Right.
This is why they cut everything out of his character by making him this whiny. If they would have made him Derrick Rose, where he's been protected by the family and he's looked at as the person that's going to get out of this area, and they actually made it something that he was going to make it out of the ghetto, and he was going to go to the NBA. He was going to go to this college and he was going to be good, but they don't. They make him into somebody who's just a crybaby.
And that would have been okay if they would have done it a different way. Here's what I would have done with that character. If you want to make him homesick or anything like that, have him call mom instead of talking to the coach.
Exactly.
And then have mom rip on him because she wants that job and she wants a better life for all her kids. That would have played out much better than the coaching. The coaching was all awkward.
Or have him deal with the pressure. This is what we've heard this. If you follow professional sports, football or basketball mainly, you've heard these guys talk about the pressure that they had because they were the ones that were going to get their family out of a horrible situation. We're going to talk about some people who have some checkered past, but you look at somebody like Ray Lewis. That's what drove Ray Lewis to be an amazing linebacker, was he was getting his family out of a bad situation. If they had him dealing with this pressure and his mom told him straight up, you're our ticket out of here, you need to suck it up, it would have been a lot more believable. It would have been real.
I mean, he could have gone to the coach, and the coach could have took him to Happy. J.T. Walsh is awesome as a bad guy.
Yeah.
He dies. So
yeah.
You take him to J.T. Walsh, and J.T. Walsh just go right into him, giving him the riot act, make him feel like crap, and say, you want to leave? Fine. Your mom's out this, your mom doesn't get that. Make him feel like crap. But they go on the phone, and you lose a great interaction with that character, because Happy is a great character. It's one of the few characters in this movie that I enjoy because he's the evil.
Happy is the evil character because he's the evil booster, but he's also speaking a lot of truth. And I don't like the fact that we use the villain to speak the truth about the situation. The idea, too, that they were going to take her job away and the house away, that's a fallacy as well. There's no way. You know why?
Be in the front newspaper.
That mom would have went to the Chicago Sun-Times or the Chicago Tribune immediately. They all would have been nailed. They all would have went down. Nobody was going to say a word. There's an amazing story, the final nail into the Southern Methodist University, SMU, Mustangs back in the early 1980s, was the recruiting of Eric Dickerson. Eric Dickerson, in the last month of his senior school year, he was driving a brand new gold Firebird. And everybody knew that Texas A&M had given him that Firebird, and he was supposed to commit to Texas A&M. And then on signing day, he signs the letter of intent to go to SMU, which is a similar situation that we have in this movie that we'll talk about as well, where everybody's looking at the teletype of everybody signing. And that's an homage back to that scandal. And after Eric Dickerson, somebody asked him, he drove that Firebird onto campus at SMU, and everybody knew that Texas A&M had given it to him. And he snubbed his nose right in their face. And they didn't take that car away from him because they would have been caught.
Right.
So taking any of this away from these guys is an utter and just a complete joke. They all had too much to lose. It's a ridiculous morality play. And that's another criticism I have of the movie, is trying to be this morality play.
But I don't think Happy's the only guy that says that these players deserve more. I think everybody in the movie kind of states that.
Happy is the only one who says the truth out loud, because then Pete repeats it to his ex-wife when they're at dinner, and he's like, well, maybe they should be paid. And he just says it like really under his breath and all of this bull. But using the villain to speak the truth about the hypocrisy of the entire NCAA relationship with its quote-unquote student athletes. How to put this kindly? It's fueled a lot of the anti-student or anti-player rhetoric that's been flying around for years, that these guys don't deserve to be paid, and basically that the NCAA is using them for free labor while everybody else gets rich. It's happened for years, but having guys like Happy be the one to come out to say the truth, that everybody's getting money off of these kids, it's wrong, is what it is. Because that means you're putting the truth on the wrong side of right and wrong.
I guess the issue here, though, would be, and we're, of course, now getting away from the movie a little bit, but who gets the money? All the players get the money? Some of the players get money? What is it based on? Then do smaller schools just have to not be part of the NCAA and they move into a different division because they can't keep up, and it's going to only be 8 teams playing basketball or football because nobody else can compete with the money? I understand why there's rules to a certain extent, because then other colleges can't compete. But then there's also the thing about giving them the money and them not performing. There's tons of college busts as well, who get a free scholarship and go and play, and they get an education that now costs what, $100 to $150 $1,000 easily now. I mean, I think it's a lot more than that. I'm just being nice about that. They're getting that education that's supposed to give them a better job down the road. I mean, I understand they're not getting paid value because some
not
colleges make, but not all colleges are like that, though. That's the thing. Mostly, it's only the ones that are going to the tournament every year that are able to make that kind of money. What about these other colleges that get in like once every 4 or 5 years just because they had a good run in their tournament and now all of a sudden they're there? Are they going to be able to compete anymore? No, because all the great colleges. It's just like Alabama gets all the great football players. Georgia gets all the great football players. And then after the top 4 teams, there's a big gap of talent. And that's the problem with paying players.
Well, we're not going to solve this problem because one,
there's bigger problems to solve than this. But.
That and the reality of what you're saying is not right. The bottom line is there are haves and have-nots in the NCAA system. It's now starting to become more even based off of the name and likeness ruling by the Supreme Court that allowed players to be able to sell their name and likeness. It's also a more even playing field now because kids can transfer without having to sit out a year. They're not penalized anymore. There's the transfer portal. They're given more of an opportunity to showcase themselves in a way to move themselves onto the next level. And to say that the little schools would not have a place at the table, they don't have a place at the table now. So paying the players, that's not an argument because right now there was a vast gap in talent between teams. And then to say that there's not is a joke. And also, too, to say that these schools, even the smaller schools, aren't making money. Most of these schools get paid big-time money to have their games put on ESPN, ESPN+, ESPN2, Fox,
The Ocho,
and CBS. They make money. Now, if you're going down to, like, Division III, we're talking about a completely different level.
I think it's more apparent in football to me than it is in basketball. Because football, there is a big gap if you are getting the top-tier players. Basketball, you're only going to have 12 players on a team. Whereas football, you're going to have a whole lot more players. So if you buy more players, you're going to have a bigger edge in football.
And to get back to the movie, that's what Happy's doing. Mm-hmm. Happy and the quote-unquote the friends of the program.
Which I think is a great name.
And that's kind of what they were alluded to in real life, was the friends of the program, the alumni.
The successful alumni.
Right. They bought football team. And he says the football team's ranked in the top 10 every year or something like that. He goes and lists to Pete Bell all the players that essentially that are on quote-unquote the payroll.
They've been doing it for years with the football team.
Right.
And now
here's
you got to do it to compete.
This movie came out in 94. The movie The Program came out in 93. And if we're talking about how paying players was done, The Program handles it much more realistically than what Blue Chips does. Essentially what happens is on Saturday they play the game. Saturday night they go to a quote-unquote like alumni dinner. And one of the famous alumni or whatever will hand an envelope full of money to the players. That's how this crap was done. Well, let's get into another huge complaint that I have. Okay, so Happy's going to do this, and he's going to quote-unquote buy Ricky Rowe, and he's going to buy Butch McRae, and he's going to buy Neon Bordeaux. All right, so what does he do? And I know that we only have an hour and 25-minute movie, so everything has to be condensed for storytelling reasons. But he does it in the dumbest way possible. The fact that he hasn't been caught for doing this for football, if this is how he does it, is a complete and utter miracle. Because everything is traceable immediately back to the friends of the program. Ed O'Neill and his co-worker didn't have to do any legwork to figure out exactly who was paying these guys. It's ridiculous.
It was pretty blatant.
Right. Outside of some guy going and carrying a banner saying we're paying Butch McRae or we're paying Ricky Rowe, it couldn't have been more obvious.
It's silly. It really is.
It's comical.
as much as you didn't like one-on-one, at least when they gave the players money, they gave them 2 tickets and handed them an envelope full of cash.
That's more believable. Have the player go deliver the season tickets or whatever to the booster.
I like what you're saying about the program, because I think what the program lacks is real football.
Exactly.
And what Blue Chip lacks is everything
Real
but
characters.
real basketball. Because they do the basketball part really good. Except sometimes if you watch the scoreboard, it doesn't make sense. But outside of that, the actual play, it feels authentic. Whereas like the program, it feels forced and
It's
childish.
very hard to do football.
Ask
Yeah.
Oliver Stone in any given Sunday how hard it is to recreate real football. It's almost impossible because football cannot be played at anything but less than 100% if you don't want to literally kill yourself,
Yeah.
because that's what's going to happen.
My favorite movie for football play is North Dallas 40. For whatever reason, I actually enjoy that
Mac
movie
Davis.
when it comes to
Yeah,
football.
it's a great movie.
Yeah.
Isn't Nick
And they
Nolte
did-
in that too?
Yes. Nick
Yes,
Nolte.
there we
go. Yeah.
There's the connection right there.
There we go.
Going back to our discussion about J.T. Walsh's character, Happy being the bad guy here, I just loved him, though, in this
Oh,
movie.
he's awesome. I
Yeah,
agree with
he's-
you 1,000%. And he's that guy. You knew the moment he walked on screen, that's the bad guy.
Right.
He
yes.
walks in with the 2 blondes,
Yes.
and-
yes.
and right
know
there
he's
you're
the
like,
bad guy.
oh.
Yep. That's
And
him.
right. And you go, that's JT Walsh. This shit's about ready to go down. He's the evil guy because he plays the evil guy so well in so many movies. And he does amazingly well here. I just don't like the construct of the character.
It does it well until the end. When we get to the press conference at the end,
Yeah,
that's a whole nother conversation that we'll talk about, because that's the piece de resistance on this movie of how completely ludicrous and stupid this whole thing is.
yeah, it just feels like this would have served better as a TV series than it would a movie, because we don't
I don't
have
even
enough
know.
time. We don't have time to develop any of the characters.
Right.
We have a backstory, but the backstory is like thrown at us really quickly. Like, for instance, Pete and his ex-wife, we know that their marriage didn't work, but they're still friends, and it seems like they're friends with benefits, it sounds
It's
like.
awkward. Yes.
It is a
very
little awkward. Yeah.
That throughout the whole film doesn't play very well. And then how she finds out about the friends of the program, his assistant doesn't tell him, hey, I made a goof. I actually told your ex-wife.
Yeah.
I mean, how that all played out, that was some of the worst acting, by the way, when he told her about the friends of the program. I was just like, really? This is how you're going to do it? And it's a shame, because the actress who plays his wife, I forget
Mary
her name.
McDonald.
She does a very good job. I really enjoy her in the scenes. I think she is a breath of fresh air into the movie when she comes in. It's just these assistant coaches, they're bad actors. They're not really good acting. They're sitting there watching the film about the shaved points.
Oh, God, I hate that so bad. I would have punched that little white guy in the face.
It was a bad scene. You're right.
I wished that one assistant coach would have just punched him right in his face and told him to shut up, because he just kept it.
Well, both of them, it was kind of weird, because one of them wasn't even on the coaching staff at the time, but somehow knew about all the points that he scored and
No,
everything
that's
that he did.
that's
during
the
game.
little white. That's the little white annoying coach. He's the one that keeps going. He missed that. He missed that pass. Threw it to nobody.
No, but I'm talking about the actual stats and what the line was
yeah.
that game.
No,
he
no,
didn't he didn't say any of that. That was the
Yeah,
other
he was
coaches
like,
that-
he goes, "What was the line on the game?" And like halfway through, he goes, "I bet you didn't cover the spread that night."
No, he said stuff like that, but they actually threw out numbers. I believe it was 8 points, and he scored 23 points that game. And
They were talking about
Yeah.
Tony's stats for the game.
Tony
Yeah.
stats wise, and they seem to know everything, even though one of them wasn't even on the team at that
Photographic
particular time.
memories, huh?
It's-
Well,
Yeah.
the one that wasn't on the team was the one that was annoying. The guy spitting out Tony's stats for the game is there, but just a little bit of them maybe pulling the stat book from that game would have made that a lot more sense. But if you talk to some coaches have that weird memory and it's not quite an eidetic memory, but they have this weird thing where they can remember stats of random games. It's not that big of a stretch that the one assistant coach would know.
But it's not just this scene. It's also the scene where you have Ricky come in and say what he wants, the 30,000. That's a bad scene. Though I really enjoy Nick Nolte's facial expressions when he's telling him how much money he wants. But I just feel like that wouldn't have happened at all.
That's not how that stuff happens. Bobby Knight was quoted by somebody that said that a lot of this was kind of how it happened. I don't believe it for a second. I don't believe any player would have sat down in front of Bobby Knight and told him what he wanted as far as monetary compensation under the table. Because here's the thing. Bobby Knight and coaches, they don't deal with this. What Pete Bell does when he has to, quote-unquote, go to Happy to authorize this, quote-unquote, just absolutely ridiculous. They don't want their hands dirty on this. They aren't going to know anything. That's why when Penny Hardaway comes and wants to know if his mom's going to get his stuff taken away, Nick Nolte's character wouldn't have had anything to do with that. He probably could have gotten a face-to-face with the coach, but it probably wouldn't have happened right after practice. Come on now. If you're talking about a coach that's supposed to be as high profile as Pete Bell is, you're going to be dealing with the assistants. You're not going to be dealing directly with him.
And here's the thing with Pete Bell as well. If you've been in the game this long, even if your program is clean, how naive are you? I mean, he's one of the most naive people when it comes to this. He doesn't know how any of this works. I understand it being a clean program, but the fact that you have no knowledge of what boosters can do, the average person knows more than you do about how the boosters work.
It completely cuts the guts out of the character. It takes any believability that he does bring to the character.
And it's unfortunate because Nick Nolte does a good job. I enjoy his acting. He does show why he's a really good actor in this movie. But what he's being given here is horseshit.
You know, and the person who wrote this, Ron Shelton, I actually like a lot of Ron Shelton's stuff.
Yeah. White Man Can't Jump.
White Man Can't Jump is awesome. Bull Durham is awesome. I like Tin Cup a lot.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
He can put together quality scripts. I don't know what happened here. It seems very amateurish. Okay, maybe you're right. Maybe it should have been a TV show. I don't know. But if this is the quality of writing you're going to get, it doesn't last a season. It is laughably bad here. Maybe what they should have done, instead of having every single possible scandal be put into one movie, maybe just deal with one scandal? The whole idea that Pete Bell says his whole entire coaching career is going to be over because they paid some players is also 1,000% completely unbelievable. Because coaches at this point in time, would he have been fired from Western University? Probably. Would the athletic director have been fired? Yeah, probably. But you know what? 2 or 3 years later, guess who's going to be rehired at a major college program? The one thing that would have gotten him in the biggest amount of trouble and could have really, truly ruined his career is the point shaving scandal. And that's played off as just a toss-away thing.
Right.
That is technically illegal. There is legal ramifications to that particular offense. That's just played off as like, he got him one night. And Tony just threw away a couple of passes.
And that's what bothers me, too, is what really sets him off to really end this whole thing is the point shaving thing that he has nothing to deal with. The fact that his player did it in his freshman year, he's now upset and now remembers that his program should have been clean.
I coached a fixed game.
No, you didn't.
You had no idea.
You had no idea that that's what he was doing. But that's what sets him off. That's what makes him decide, I need to come out clean, is something that happened 3 years ago that you had nothing to deal with. And I think the writing is sloppy also in the fact that, okay, they have a losing season. What does he do next? We need to go find these players. We see them visiting Hardaway at a home game. But here's the thing. When college basketball season ends, does high school basketball, is that still going?
Definitely not in Chicago.
Not anywhere. Because usually by the time they even get to state,
all I can speak for is for high school basketball in Illinois. And high school basketball in Illinois is done like the second week of March. So once the college basketball season's over, there would have been no high school basketball for them to go see. I do
Right.
know other states operate on a different time schedule, especially with like football. When you get to California and Florida, it's not necessarily the same.
Yeah.
I don't
Unless
know,
they were in
but
some type of tournament play, which he wasn't in at this time.
No,
This
they're
was
playing
just a
at their
regular-
home gym. Yeah, they're playing
They're
at,
just playing at the home gym.
which actually
And
was shot at a home gym in Chicago. I
yeah,
believe it was
Mark Carmel.
Mount Carmel High School.
By this time, if he's that great of a player, he would have already had committed to a college already. Most players are going to commit early in their senior year, not when they're about ready to graduate.
National Signing Day is when they would make that
Right. I think
official.
this would be way past that,
But
right?
especially I know in Illinois, because that's what I know the best. Like if you watch the high school tournament finals on TV, they'll tell you that this player's committed to this school or this player's that committed to that school. So
Right.
National Signing Day is usually come and gone by that point.
I just feel like
It's-
it's just sloppy all over the place.
It is. It's sloppy, but it's also very lazy. It's
Coaches
it's
that
lazy
travel
writing.
in packs together. You have 5 or 6 coaches that are traveling together, looking at the same player at the same time.
Staying in the same hotel room, same rental car, same restaurants.
And
Yeah.
I mean, and the acting by those coaches are
Oh, it's
just
horrible.
horrible. It just doesn't make any sense. Sometimes I think these cameos actually hurt this movie than they helped the movie, and this is one of them. We know some of these coaches, Tark,
Yeah,
UNLV.
Tark.
I mean,
Yeah.
he was huge.
Oh, yeah.
In the early mid-90s, because that's when his UNLV team, it was like a run and gun type of team, and so he was very
The
popular
run and-
at the time.
The Runnin' Rebels. Tark is probably the best cameo here because he says one line where he says, I don't know if I can get him into school here. Tark, he is the Al Davis of college basketball. He got into so many fights with the NCAA because he fought essentially that these guys should be paid, and he didn't care. He also helped get kids into school that probably were on the fringes of being able to get into school. He was blackballed by the NCAA. But I think it's funny that he gets to say the line that he doesn't think that he can get him into school with me. They're all playing the game to try to get the kid into school, but
Right, they're all
it's
giving him
just- it's just
excuses on
funny.
why they
Yeah.
don't think they're going to come to his team or why they can't
Right.
get him on. Trying to play the game with him, which it just plays off as being silly. And then, of course, he's the coach that gets to actually talk to Louis Gossett
Right.
Jr.'s character, and he seems to know who Tony is. Did Tony go to this school?
Tony
Okay.
did go to the same
I
school.
didn't know if he did or not, but I guess that's why he has the end.
Connections.
is for-
Yeah, the end.
Yeah, maybe because of Tony. Tony is a weird character because it seems like everybody loves Tony, but I don't know
That's
Tony.
what the movie should have been named.
Everyone
Tony.
loves Tony.
Well, that's the thing is, coaches talk about how much they love him. His ex-wife talks about how much he loves him.
Yep.
You have this guy talking about how much he loves him, but I don't love him because I don't know him. You don't show me
Oh.
why everybody loves him.
All we know is what we're supposed to know is he's flunking TV. That's lazy writing in of itself.
TV.
Yeah.
Why couldn't it be
And
science or
he-
something hard?
He-
Something
Because
we
they
know
don't
that
take hard
Well,
classes. Come
and
on.
that's what they're trying to portray.
right.
That they're all a bunch of dumb idiots and that they're not taking real courses, which there have been schools that have been busted for that, and which is another scandal.
But that's the problem here, is because the coach actually says they take real classes,
Well, of
and
course.
he's very proud of that they take real classes,
Well,
and they
see,
get real
this is-
education.
This was the Bobby Knight line. See, you have to go back and you have to remember. Bobby Knight got into a lot of trouble a couple of times in the 80s, but he's still king of the hill here in 1994. They hadn't won a championship in quite a while, but this was his playing card. He ran a quote-unquote a clean program, and everybody graduated. And damn how it took to get there. This is the playbook that we're supposed to be mimicking.
Are you talking
Pete
about
Bell.
Bobby Knight or are you talking about
Yes.
Pete Bell? Okay.
No, Bobby Knight. Pete Bell is essentially the doppelganger
Knight, yeah.
for Bobby Knight, which makes it even worse that Pete Bell's character is such an idiot.
Why do you think he's an idiot? You think naive or like a legitimate idiot?
This the naive
Naiveness
that he would-
about
that he would be this successful and be this naive as to how things work. Come on.
In the NCAA college realms of basketball.
Right. These guys,
they know. I know.
Surrogate kings of their own little kingdom. They rule with an iron fist. They know everything that goes on in their program.
I don't know all my Bobby Knight trivia, but if we're comparing him to Pete Bell as a doppelganger, as you say, was Bobby Knight's argument was everyone graduates because they're all taking like preschool classes?
The NCAA never looked into them for fixing classes. So in that sense, Bobby Knight's right. And Bobby Knight consistently did have one of the highest graduation rates in college basketball, Division I.
A 4-year graduation, not
exactly
bailing at 3 going into the NBA.
Right, because this was
different
a time,
era. Different era, right?
Because this was a time when, like Isaiah Thomas and those guys, Michael Jordan coming out after his junior year was considered odd. You went for 4 years. And yes, his graduation rate was top of the line.
You know the one thing that really bugs me about this movie, considering that we haven't brought it up yet, but it's the same quote-unquote university from the movie we did earlier, One-on-One, but the Dolphins. I think it's a stupid name for a basketball team. Yeah, you got the Miami Dolphins in football, but that's Miami. All right. I know it's LA. I know it's the West Coast, but it just seems like a dumb name. Western University Dolphins.
Well, see,
you couldn't come up with anything better.
And see, this is the thing too. Because we have these similarities and the lazy writing and knows no bounds. Okay, so they're set in LA. They're supposedly had a winning record and everybody was supposed to come. Bob Cousy even says, look at the banners. That used to be worth, 8 points or something like that is what he says to Pete Bell?
Yeah.
Okay, so essentially what we're trying to mimic here
UCLA.
is UCLA. Look at the uniforms and look at the colors. Blue, white, and gold. That's UCLA. But then with the reputation of Bobby Knight in Indiana, the last championship was the same year as Indiana's last championship, which was 1986. That's even lazy.
There you go.
I think the location of the gym that they use is kind of lazy too. They actually are using a high school gym in Indiana that actually seats, I think, 5,000 people, though they're saying
that's amazing.
It's an amazing gym for a high school. That's for sure.
Yeah, no.
Indiana loves its basketball.
It's underwhelming for a big college stadium.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, maybe yes and no, because Cameron Indoor Stadium...
They only have 2 hoops, unless they roll out all the other hoops onto the court. They don't have any other hoops coming from the rafters. And if you have a college basketball team, you're going to have more than just 2 hoops that you play with.
Yeah, I'm going to be 100%. I've never been into a major college basketball arena. Other than just being at home watching it on TV. I don't know if like Cameron Indoor Stadium in Duke, or if they would have anything like that. Or I don't even know if down in Champaign, because we're in Illinois here, I don't even know if the University of Illinois has multiple baskets in there. I will say this, Western University, the Dolphins, they have their own practice facility too. They don't practice in the same place where they play their games.
By the way, did the friends of the program upgrade their locker room the next year? Because when they're in that game, the first game of the next season, they have a big, huge screen TV behind them that's playing while the coach is talking to them. I don't see that at the beginning of the movie, but now I see it now.
They must have improved the locker room facilities. And the only thing that you can think about that is if Pete Bell loses his mind, he's going to break the TV. So...
All I know is whatever restaurant they're going to, every place they sit down, Nick Nolte's picture is in the background with the basketball. That's why I'm saying, if this program is so big, why is the stadium... It looks like an overgrown high school stadium. I hate to say that. But I want to go back to the Bob Cousy
That's
character.
That's a big-ass high school stadium.
It is, though.
It's a Division III school.
Back to the Bob Cousy character, because I think it's interesting that he gets to play this part. One of my favorite parts, of course, is him shooting the free throws and not missing.
That's the best part.
I guess one of the deals was the way that Bob Cousy says it was supposed to play out was that him and Nolte were supposed to take turns shooting free throws while discussing everything. But the problem was
Cousy do until he missed.
Right, and Cousy never missed. And in fact, And so some of that is being ad-libbed because Nolte is saying stuff like, are you ever going to miss?
Don't you ever miss? Yeah.
Don't you ever miss?
And then he shoots at the end with the left hand, and he's like, you don't even miss it left-handed. Kuzi, I believe, was like an 85% free throw shooter for his career, so he was a decent free throw shooter.
Bob Cousy was one of the all-time great basketball players.
Kuzi took a little bit of a dig on Shaquille O'Neal, though, in an interview. He said they were all impressed what he was doing because the day before Shaquille O'Neal came over and he missed 13 out of 15 free throws when he was shooting free throws the day before. I thought that was kind of uncalled for. I didn't think he needed to, say that in an interview. Just focus on your own self. But his character is kind of a wimp character in itself.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to know what's going on. He wants to turn a blind eye.
He's all about the CYA, cover your ass.
He's going to let it happen, but he doesn't want to know that it happened so he can say, I never knew that was happening.
Even though he knows he's going to get fired.
Yeah. I mean, he needed to take a stance. I mean, if your basketball team has been doing this for this long of a time.
If I was Bob Cousy and I read the script, I would have never have taken this part. You're one of the all-time greats in basketball history. Literally helped change the game. I don't see exactly what he would have gotten out of this.
I think this comes from I think he's a Boston Celtics fan. And
that makes sense. That's why he got Cousy.
So that's how I think the part was probably given to him, because it's not based on his acting chops. That's for sure.
Oh, God, no.
And that's the problem also with this movie is you got real actors, people who are Academy Award nominee type of actors in this movie, paired with people who couldn't act out of a paper bag. The combination of what you're doing here is just, it's not good. Right. And you have a weak script and you have weak actors. It's not surprising this movie lost money. The more and more I talk and the more and more I watch this movie, the more and more I start getting mad at it.
So, it's funny because it had such a great cast. It's right around the height of, basketball's kingdom. I'd be curious to know what the stats were for opening weekend. You just must have had a lot of people go opening weekend and then just trash this movie. And the numbers went down from there.
I would be surprised if that's not the case. You have some of the biggest stars at the time. Especially basketball stars. I mean,
exactly.
I mean, having Shaq in there is a major get right off the bat.
Maybe that's the problem, is you focus too much on getting people like Shaq and not focus on the good characters you already have, like in J.T. Walsh's happy character. And then Ed O'Neill's there. If you're going to have a guy who's going to go after you for the point shaving and getting these players and stuff like that, go all in on it. Mm-hmm. Don't give us little brief things here and there on it.
I would have liked to see more of Ed O'Neill's investigative work.
Right.
Going after him.
He doesn't have to do any work to find any of this.
All he does is really, there's the one scene with the investigation and then 2 questions.
I'm not asking for all the President's Men or Spotlight. Have him have to do a little bit of work. I mean, he does no work. He just spews the scandal right off the top of his head because I guess he knows everybody who's ever graduated from Western University, and because he knows the one guy graduated with Happy Kuykendall. But we never see him do any of this work. He's already been on Pete Bell's ass for the point shaving scandal.
How does he know about the point shaving scandal
that's
as well?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Allegedly,
that's
but he's
exactly
the one that
what I was going to say.
He's the one that started the wheels on that.
How did he figure it out? That even is a bigger insult to Pete Bell, that he didn't know that Tony shaved points. Because if Ed O'Neill can figure this out...
But how does Ed O'Neill not know that Happy is behind all of this? How does he not know that Happy isn't? No, he doesn't. He doesn't know about Happy.
He just knows about the quote-unquote friends of the program. But he does mention Happy when he's going down the list of the stuff that's been given to Ricky Rowe.
Right, because I think isn't he one that owns the farming equipment or something like that?
His friend, one of the alumni.
It was a graduate. It was he graduated the same class as Happy, so he knows Happy.
He just can't nail him.
But he'd rather go after Coach Bell than go after Happy. It seems like he has a vendetta against the coach for whatever reason. I would have liked to know what that reason was. And it seems like everybody's to get him. Even the sports announcer. We see him on TV telling him that he needs to quit. They need to get rid of him and stuff. But sportcasters wouldn't do that. You could have somebody who has an opinion, but you wouldn't use that same person who rips on your coach interviewing the coach at the same time, especially in a big market if we're talking about L.A. They would have kept that separate. They would have played nice with the coach. They would have sent somebody up over there that the coach would have felt comfortable with.
Right.
It didn't make any sense. And he's another character that just shows up and then disappears, and we don't hear about this guy again.
Okay, let's get to the final scene.
Oh, the final scene.
After we get to the final scene, okay, then we need to talk about some stuff that we did like, because there is some stuff that I did like here. The final scene where Pete Bell resigns his position. This is the biggest pile of garbage. This is the piece de resistance as far as how stupid this movie is. There in no way in hell would any college coach ever do anything remotely like this. It's so ludicrous. It defies logic. I don't admire him for what he does. I don't even think he's doing the right thing. What he's doing is 1,000% selfish. He is not a hero for what he does. And I will die on this hill. I don't care. He is not anywhere close to the hero that this movie wants to make him out to be. He's held himself to some higher moral standard. It's a joke.
I agree with you, Ted, here. And here's the reasons why I agree with you. If you feel that way about what you've done, just quit. You're selling everybody else down the river with you. You basically ended the career of your athletic director.
Yep.
Your players are not going to be able to play in any tournaments for 3 years. 3 years. And at this time, you just talked about, there's no transfer protocol. So there's this 3-year suspension on these kids. And then you have your assistant coaches. You're not thinking about them. Are they now blackballed? Are they not able to now be able to coach in college? Everybody's jobs are relying on you. If you feel that way about what you have done, because this is your doing, nobody else's, quit.
Exactly.
Go, take the Pete Carroll route and go coach professional basketball or something.
Get the hell out of Dodge just before the posse has come to get you.
Pretty much.
And I had mentioned this earlier. These college coaches, they treat these universities like their own personal kingdom. What happens? A king falls on his own sword and takes it for everybody.
Yeah.
He doesn't go out there and take down the ship. I mean, holy smokes. It is so self-serving. It goes against everything what it means to be a coach. Being a coach is being selfless because you're giving and imparting knowledge. He doesn't do that at all. The best thing as far as coaching that he does is he does coach Shaquille O'Neal on how to do the turn to get to the basket. He does a really good job of some of the coaching there.
Yeah, and some of the in-game coaching is not bad. That play that he draws up at the end, and also a play earlier that they have for Ricky Rowe, where he makes the jumper by the free throw line. That all plays out that way, the way exactly how he talks about it. That's how it plays out. I like the movie for that particular reason.
And you really get this feeling that they want to make him out to be the hero for what he does here at the end. I mean, you even get the raise in the music and everything for what he did was right and all of this. And I go back to this point. The person who's speaking the truth, that these guys do deserve to be paid, that they're getting the shaft off of the NCAA, that the players are the ones getting screwed, is happy. It's not Coach Pete Bell. He's not going up there for these guys are mistreated. He's not saying any of that. He says he goes along with everything. And it's so self-serving, this holier than thou, I'm dirty now, and my reputation has been soiled. So therefore, I'm just going to take a gigantic poop on everybody, and damn the consequences.
Happy
very
reacts,
Shakespearean of you.
And Happy reacts not like Happy.
He loses his shit.
He loses his crap and basically tries to make everybody see that he's right. That doesn't sound like the Happy throughout the whole show. And
no.
He's sitting there with his boosters. All he has to do is just keep quiet and everything is fine.
Happy should have sat there and said, you know what? Prove everything that you're saying.
Right.
But you know what? Here's the thing. They did everything so stupidly, there's no way that he can conceivably do that.
And Happy probably would still keep on doing what he's doing. He doesn't do anything to stop that from happening. Because, first of all, Happy will just go back to the football team, which we don't have any proof on the football team unless they start investigating really hard on the football team. But
Pete Bell throws the football team under the bus as well.
Yeah, but he doesn't, like you said, have any proof, and he doesn't really have anything to go by. And then I hate the fact that after he walks out of the building, He goes to a playground to teach kids how to play basketball. I'm sorry, but that almost made me throw up in my mouth. It's just really stupid.
He should probably be away from kids for a while.
I mean, I wouldn't mind them showing 3 years later a basketball game going, and they're doing the epilogue, and he's coaching a high school basketball game.
Right.
But they're not
Kicking a basketball across the court.
He wouldn't be getting away with this shit if he was coaching high school basketball.
But I mean, I would have rather seen that, and then there'd be no, like, you don't hear anything. You just read the epilogue, and you just see the background with him coaching a high school basketball team. That's how I would have ended it.
Or
thing.
working at Baskin Robbins, or just
The
drunk in the gutter.
The epilogue says that he's coaching a high school somewhere in the Midwest.
Dun,
Yeah.
dun, dun.
Why not have this? You already made it out that he's friends with Louis Gossett Jr., the priest at that high school. Why doesn't he just go to Chicago and coach for Louis Gossett Jr.? Let's make the whole lazy circle even lazier.
Here's how I'll sum it up for you. Larry Bird is in this movie. I love Larry Bird. I love to see Larry Bird. But then Larry Bird is acting, and it all falls apart for me.
Oh, it is. It's cheesy.
Here's the thing.
That's what the movie is. I want to see
Larry
this
Bird's
movie.
in this movie. You know who isn't in this movie? Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson, I don't know if they even approached him. He's like, yeah, no, I'm peace out on this.
Obviously, pick Larry Bird because of French
Because
Lick.
of Ricky Rowe. Yeah.
Yes, so it makes perfect
Because
sense. He's playing by himself in a playground, and Pete Bell just drives up. Hey, Larry Bird, how are you?
funny thing about that, do you remember the Adidas commercial with him and Magic Johnson, where Magic Johnson pulls up in the limo to Larry Bird's house? It was not Adidas, it was a Converse.
Converse.
It was a Converse commercial. That is Larry Bird's court at his house.
Yeah. He doesn't live there anymore. It's some type of like museum or something. It's something else now. He doesn't
Probably
live there
in
anymore.
his honor or something.
Birdland.
Because
Birdland.
French Lick, let's be honest, French Lick has nothing else but Larry Bird.
Pretty much.
Like I've alluded to, things have changed in the NCAA, and they've changed drastically thanks to the Supreme Court, where students can profit off of their name and likeness. And we're talking about a time in 1994 where the NCAA ruled with an iron fist, and they ruled for a long time with this holier-than-thou attitude. You have to remember, these guys, and Happy doesn't even get into this, but as far as these guys deserving to be paid, if you were a regular student at college, you could have a part-time job or a full-time job if you could hold the credit hours. You could get paid. If you were a student, quote-unquote, a student athlete under the NCAA, you were not allowed to have any sort of job. You were forbidden. You couldn't even work on campus. When I went to college, I worked at the library and I worked at the campus store to get through college. Student athlete wasn't allowed to do that.
And you know why, right?
And because the NCAA thought that was a way that they could get paid.
Well, not just get paid, but they would get paid a lot more than what the job would normally pay them.
Exactly. Things have changed so drastically in the years because the amount of money has went up so massively. Back in the 90s, these guys didn't have multi-million-dollar training facilities. Some of these guys didn't even have money enough to go out for a pizza on Friday night.
I got one question I want to ask you guys. Would you say this movie is the draft day of basketball?
It's worse.
Because it's pretending to be a great movie. It's trying to be something that it's not, whereas Draft Day is already showing you that it's silly.
Right. This movie thinks that it is All the President's Men.
I wouldn't go that
it's not even
far.
Close.
If William Friedkin was still alive, he would tell you that's what his goal was.
I firmly believe that they were, quote unquote, pulling back the curtain on college basketball and all of this garbage. This movie thinks that it's really something.
He thinks he's Oliver Stone. That's what William Friedkin thinks he is. He thinks he's Oliver Stone and that he has this conspiracy that he's like giving us.
That's probably not too far off.
And since I'm on William Friedkin, he hit somebody again on this film to get a reaction out of him. One of the basketball players.
There's a big surprise.
Surprised the basketball player didn't clock him.
The least surprising thing that's said on this whole podcast, William Friedkin actually hit somebody again.
He wouldn't hit Nick Nolte. I'm sure Nick Nolte would have hit him back.
Yeah, I guarantee he didn't hit Shaquille O'Neal either.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we spent the last hour talking about this movie, so let's kick it off with some of our reviews here. Ken, tell us your thoughts.
I want to like this movie. I really, really want to like this movie because I love basketball. I like Nick Nolte. There's a lot of things in here that you would think would make me really excited about this movie. And to be honest with you, it had been a long time since I watched this movie. Even before we did the podcast, I knew I had mixed feelings about it. Watching it again, I watched it, unfortunately, 3 times. And each time I watched it, I got angrier and angrier and angrier. Every time I watched it, there was something else that I noticed that just drove me mad.
So his grade is getting worse and worse and worse as he's watching.
Yeah, it's getting worse and worse as we go along.
So now you know how it feels.
I guess you guys are talking about the one-on-one movie that I made you guys watch. However, I already knew what I was getting myself into when this movie was picked. Nick Nolte does a good job, but what he has to work with is not good. This could have been so much more. I agree with Ted on if they would have focused maybe on one thing, that maybe it could have been a better movie. In fact, I think if they would have just bought one player, would have been enough. Because this is a basketball team. This is not a football team where 3 or 4 players you could get on your draft day. This is a basketball team, and one player can make the difference. And I think if you focused on that one player and the relationship with that one player and all the things that are going on, then this could have been a much better movie. It's not a horrible movie, and that's because the basketball sequences are good. Fun fact, Bob Knight ruined the last scene, the last basketball scene, by not letting them score at the end, so they had to do a retake because Bob Knight wanted to win still. I think that's funny. The basketball scenes make this tolerable for me, but that's about it. It's a movie that I'm not going to watch again, to be perfectly honest with you. So I'm going to give you my grade right now. It's a C+.
Okay. Ted, what are your thoughts?
Along with Ken, I spent the last probably hour and change tearing this movie apart. But there are some things that I really do like about this movie. I like J.T. Walsh. There's very few parts that he's ever played that I don't like him in. I really like Nick Nolte. I think Nick Nolte does a great job. I even think for what they're asked to do as far as the basketball goes, I think the basketball players all do a remarkably great job. I think Shaquille O'Neal does a pretty decent job here. First time ever acting. He actually has character. He actually brings some character to his part. The basketball sequences are awesome. It feels like real basketball. And for that, it's enjoyable. On the bad side, though, there's no excuse for Ron Shelton and William Friedkin. Either one of these guys, the writer and the director. There is no reason for this movie to be this lazy, for this movie to be written so poorly, but to think so high of itself. The only thing that comes to mind of the movies that we reviewed The Exorcism of Emily Rose. That director, his opinion of his movie actually affected my grade of that movie, where he thought he was making the next big crime courtroom drama. I don't know what William Friedkin was thinking here. He did not make a good movie. This is a subpar movie. And there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of things I like, but I can't get over the parts that I don't. But this is where the craziness comes in, because every once in a while, I get the itch to want to watch this movie. And I have to watch it for some reason. It's just one of those crazy things, because there are some things that I really do like. If I'm being honest, this movie is a D+. But I'm not going to give it a D+, because there's sometimes I really want to watch this movie. So it has to be in that C- category. But if we're going for reality, I don't see a reason why anybody should run out and to watch this movie, because it's not very good.
Okay.
Except for the basketball sequences.
Well, that's a fair estimate, and I guess my lack of love of basketball kind of helps me with this movie, because I look at this movie kind of like Draft Day. I mentioned Draft Day earlier because Draft Day has very little to do with how the draft is in the NFL, but it's a fun movie. It's so out in left field, it's fun. And this movie is kind of like that with me. I like the actors. Yeah, it's poorly written. Yeah, they take themselves seriously. But you know what? At the end of the day, I'm like you, Ted. I like watching the movie. and it's fun. I like the action scenes in it. I don't take anything seriously about it. I don't know that lot about the NBA or the NCAA or anything basketball related, so maybe that helps me enjoy the movie a little bit more. So for me, this movie is B-. All right, so we have a pretty wide view there of what this movie is, a little bit to everyone else.
I think you're right, though, Eric. I think you mentioned something there that if you're not a basketball fanatic, the movie's a lot more palatable.
Yeah, because obviously there's so many holes in it that you're looking at as a basketball fan. You're like, it just, like Ken said, it makes you angrier every time you watch it. And there are many movies out there that I'll watch and I'll be like, this is not even close to what reality is. And it just ticks me off the more I watch it. But this is not that movie. It's fun. It's a fun movie.
After listening to your reviews, guys, I had to think about it again. It's now a C. So every time we talk about it, I'm just going to lower it because this is.
It's just going to keep going down
kidding.
For you, huh?
I'm just kidding. It's still a C plus, but I understand what you're saying there.
I thought you said C minus.
No, I said
C plus.
But I agree. I think it's one of those movies where if you are invested in the topic, that this is going to drive you nuts. If you're not invested in the topic, it could be like Draft Day. Do I feel like Draft Day is like good bad? It's a bad movie.
It's a guilty pleasure. It really is.
It's a guilty pleasure.
And that's kind of what this is for me.
This is a guilty pleasure in parts. We'll talk about Draft Day one day.
Yeah.
I have some really...
Eating.
Yeah.
Oh, as do I. As do I. Yes. That'll be one that we'll maybe look at down the road. So that's our review of Blue Chips. I want to thank everyone for listening once again. Ted, what's going on in Twitter world?
Well, we can be found on Twitter at hookedon_movies. And then whatever podcast format you're listening to us on, whether it be Apple, Spotify, Good Pods, Anchor, if you can leave us a rate and review, preferably a 5-star rate review, that would be awesome. It also helps us get noticed by whatever formulations that Apple has come up with. But also, too, the more ratings that you give us and the more reviews that you give us, hopefully one day we'll be able to meet that criteria and get on to Rotten Tomatoes critics section.
That's our end goal. That's where we want to be. All right. Ken, Facebook, what's going on?
Hey, join us on our Facebook page, Hooked on Movies, and join our discussion. Tell us how we did on this movie. As Ted was saying about rating and reviewing us, feel free to come and review us on the Facebook page. We want to get feedback. We want to know what we could do better, what you liked, what you would like to see us do in the future. That helps us figure out what you like out there. And this is for your entertainment. We enjoy doing it for ourselves, but we want you to enjoy it as well. If we didn't want you to enjoy it, then we would just be sitting in our living room talking about this by ourselves. But definitely join our Facebook page. We'll be happy to discuss with you.
We'll even take constructive criticism, won't we, boys?
Maybe.
Try
Possibly.
us. All right.
Make my day.
Make my day. That's all the time we have here on Hooked on Movies. Stay tuned because the next one, oh boy, this is one I've been waiting to do for a long, long time. We're going back to 1985. Mr. Albert Brooks, Lost in America. If you haven't seen it, get a copy and watch it. It's a winner. I know I'm getting my review out a little early.
Maybe.
I'm getting my all right. Well,
We'll see.
We'll see.
She's
But,
down. She's down.
You were also the one that picked Blue Chips, so we'll see what do you mean by winners.
But I like
you picked
Blue
one-on-one,
Chips.
so
Yeah.
That's a great movie. Just ask Roger Ebert.
and Maverick
And Robbie Benson.
and you also picked Maverick,
And you picked
also
Emily,
picked-
the actress's Emily Rose.
Hey, I can't be perfect all the time, just some of the
He'll
time.
never let you forget that one, will he?
No, I also picked Clerks too, so there we go.
Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't done Clerks 3 yet. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Maybe we will do Clerks 3. That would be a very interesting podcast.
And maybe I'll grow a third nipple.
You might have to.
Oh, you can milk me, Greg.
I got nipples, Greg. Can you milk me?
All right, folks. Well, thanks for listening. And as always, I'm not wearing any pants. Film at 11.
See you at the movies.
See you next time on Hooked on Movies.